Hi everybody and welcome to PawnBroker 2020. I'm Dave Larson. I'm here with some guests. Of course, you know the most successful CEO on the planet, Len Suma, and my partner in crime in our PawnBroker 2020 series. We're doing another one from the office, from the bunker here in Clearwater in our corporate offices. And I'm going to let Len have the honor of introducing our guest with us today. So Len, go ahead.
So always excited when we get an opportunity to bring in some real hardcore pawnbrokers who have been there and done that. And what I love about our guest here is he does it in a way where he's always under the radar. Everybody knows him, but he does it in a manner that is of the highest degree of professionalism. So we want to welcome Phil Iovino, 23 years in the business, 9 PawnMax stores, littered throughout the greater Tampa Bay region. I mean, it's safe to say that you guys pretty much dominate the landscape, and I've been to your operations and I can understand why. So we're really happy to have him here. We also have a fellow New Yorker here, so apologize on the accents and the A's and the R's, but how you been?
Doing well. Thanks for the intro, and yeah, it's great to be here.
Very good, very good.
Yeah, so we wanted to kind of bring some people in, especially Phil was a thought for us because, you know, we've heard a lot about what everybody did during the COVID and what was happening during and what the expectations are afterwards. But, you know, there's some real plans here that have to be made as a shop owner, as a broker. You know, we all have to be, as I've said before, fiscally responsible. We have to make decisions now to make sure that our businesses are going to be here moving forward and be able to take care of our customers. And when we talked about who we could bring in and talk to about that, there was only one name that kept coming up, and he's right there. So, you know, without further ado, you know, tell us how you're feeling now that this, not that it's passed, because it's not. There's still some tremors out there, but you know, what are you doing? How are you getting things moving forward, and what are you expecting?
You know, it's been a ride, but really the challenge that we've got to stay in front of right now is really moving stagnant merchandise, and trying to keep as much of that stagnant merchandise local as possible. If you can keep your inventory close by, it stays in your pawn cycle rather than somebody else's. Here in the greater Tampa Bay area, if I'm shipping stuff, chances are I'm not shipping it to somebody in the greater Tampa Bay area. So they're going to be pawning it in Arkansas, Alabama, or Missouri, which does me absolutely no good for my pawn balance. Might help some of you guys out, but chances are, if they do business with PawnMax, walking in my store, they find us through our e-commerce online, through local marketplaces, Facebook Marketplace, things like that. The pawn item. The item we sell them has a much higher chance of coming back in our pawn cycle, and we can make money on that same item multiple times.
Yeah, we've talked in the past and brought up the e-commerce piece, and you know, I've always believed that it's a specialized market. There are times you use e-commerce, and it's no different than dealers. You always use dealers to your benefit. You use e-commerce to your benefit. If I've got 100 Sawzalls, I have no problem selling 40 or 50 of them online if that's what I've got to do, because I have too many. But by and large, when I sell a product on the internet and it gets shipped to wherever, that's one product that I have zero chance of coming back into my world as a pawn. And let's face it, we don't sell to sell. We sell so that we can loan again. You know, when we're loaning, our plan is for the customer to pick it up. If they don't, it goes out on the floor. Our goal is to sell that item so it can come back to us at some point as a loan and or a buy, and then we can turn that product again. So that's how we kind of fuel this. So, you know, as we were discussing earlier before the show, you know, there's a real strategy behind that e-commerce piece as you move forward, and making sure that you've got product in your store, making sure that you're making the right moves. You know, how are you doing with product as an example right now? Are you guys, with all your stores, are you stocked up?
Inventory's been a challenge. You know, one of the things that were our strengths, where we were a little different than a lot of our competitors in the beginning of this, is we were always an inventory heavy company. Our jewelry cases are always pretty stacked. Our general merchandise shelves are always packed. And quite frankly, around the neighborhoods here, we're known as the pawn shop with all the stuff outside. That's how everybody, you know, recognizes our stores.
Which way back when was a problem. Now it's benefited you, right?
Absolutely. And you know, our high inventory balances helped us carry, you know, through this whole season where everybody was scrambling looking for inventory. We still had our pawns and buys default and to replenish our already stocked shelves. So really the challenge has been just keeping the merchandise that's hard to move moving, but keeping it local.
What do you find is the hardest thing you've got in your stores to move now?
You know, boy, that's changed in the last 23 years in the business. You know, the hardest merchandise to move now is wedding sets, engagement jewelry. It's the game's changed so much. You know, with the secondhand market opening up online, people that are looking for bridal jewelry are either walking into a store in a mall, generally speaking, or a jewelry store type setting, or if they're looking in the secondhand market, it's not natural for them to go into a secondhand store anymore. It's more natural for them to pick up their phone or their computer and get on Marketplace and start looking for
no question.
Yeah, it's funny, you know, a year ago you couldn't sell laptops. There were certain game systems you couldn't sell. Even the Wii's were, you know, $20. With this whole thing, you know, TVs, everybody had loads of flat panel TVs. Now you can't find a TV, you can't find a laptop, you can't find a gaming system. Anything that can stream anything, gone. On the electronics wise, you know, those things that we found were challenging to sell are no longer in our stores. Now, what does that tell you? Well, for me, I would say that a good bit of those, once all of this is passed, a good bit of those are going to come back. The good side and bad side of that, we'll get the loan balance for that. The bad side is when it comes out, it may not have the value that it had when we sold it during the COVID. And, you know, again, things that when you're in this business, you kind of got to think through, because you're looking at 60 days down the road, at least in Florida, and on that 61st day and it comes out for sale, you've got some decisions you've got to make early on when you do that loan. And those are all things that I know you think about. What are you putting in place moving forward now for you as far as marketing, and to make sure that, you know, your loans are actually loans and your buys are actually buys, and you're not stuck, you know, throwing out a whole bunch of cash thinking you've got loans and having a lot of inventory?
No, those are all good points. You know, the qualifying has never been more important than it is right now in today's marketplace. People can the general consumer is a lot more educated now than they were 23 years ago. They can stand in front of you and Google what the difference in a pawn and a buy is now, when before you could explain it to somebody 15 times and they'd still be confused. So, you know, what we're doing is really, we've revamped our whole website. Our website is more, you know, back in the day, it was geared towards driving people to our internet type items for sale. Now we're gearing towards driving people to our brick and mortar locations and or our local Facebook marketplaces.
Right.
So really, what we've done is several different things. And the other topic you brought up is loan to value ratio when an item defaults in 61-ish days. The market's going to be a lot different for electronics specifically at the end of this holiday season or the end of this following tax season. I don't know where it is. I'm not a speculator. I can't speculate the price of gold. I can't speculate electronics, but I can take a pretty educated guess and say it's not going to be where it was.
Right.
So we just have to stay on top of it day to day. And really, it's the people on the counters in the stores that are your managers that are engaged with the items and engaged with who's bringing in how many of what and how often they're picking it up. And that's really your supply and demand factor that plays into your loan to value ratios.
Well, you brought up two things, and the first one was the qualification piece. The second one was winning at the counter. I'm going to let him have the winning at the counter because he wrote an article on this, and I love his views on it. But on the qualification piece, you know, nothing. He's absolutely right. Never been more important for qualifying a loan. But here's the deal: when they come in, they're going to have every intention of picking it up. The reality is there's 30 million people out of work, and it may not get any better. So as much as they want to pick it up, whatever it is, they may not have the ability to. Maybe they'll make a payment, maybe they won't. So your qualification piece that always worked for the last 20 or 30 years is going to pivot a little tiny bit for you, and that you're going to have to read, I think, and you correct me if I'm wrong, but you're going to have to read a little bit more into that, because their intent is going to be everything that you want to see at the counter as a pawnbroker. But their actions are going to be maybe a little bit different. And it's going to be more important than ever for you to be, I believe, real diligent on trying to make those calls, as diligent as you can in making sure that you collect that pawn service charge relative to those loans, because you might get only 1 or 2 payments before it defaults. And in the end, it's very, very possible that it could default. So the goal here really is, I know I'm going to own a lot of inventory. My goal is to get as much of that pawn service charge on that loan balance that I possibly can, knowing that in the beginning, my qualification, everything that I used the past 20 years might have a little teeny tiny flaw in it that's called COVID-19. So you got to kind of build that in mind. And then on the counter piece,
Yeah, and I think while we have Phil here, what I want to talk about, and as you follow us in the PawnBroker 2020 series with Phil, in our next episode, I want to talk about winning at the counter. But honestly, I want to delve into how you, a 23-year experienced pawnbroker, because I think you've evolved as good as anyone, where you started off with this type of strategy, even for yourself, and how you operate and how you had to evolve. I talked a lot about that over the years in terms of, just winning at the counter, that's a must, but someone like you or an owner, there's a lot of back office stuff. Absolutely. And I think in our next episode, we want to delve a lot more into that, get a little bit more depth of detail, because I do think Phil is a textbook example of how you evolve in a proactive way to continue to kick the can down the road with regards to success of your business.
Well, and let's save that one then for the next episode on the evolution and his business and the business in general. So, we thank you very much for joining us today. Make sure you like us on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram. Make sure you text broker to 29288 and stay tuned, because I promise you there's more coming your way. Thanks so much.